In the beginning, the people had no fire. They were always cold, and they couldn't cook food. They couldn't find elk or deer in the thick forests, and they couldn't see enemies or hungry bears that crept into their villages. They begged Coyote to help them. Coyote went to the top of the mountain and grabbed a burning branch from the fire beings. They chased him all the way down the mountain. Coyote was very fast. He kept escaping from the fire beings. When there was only one glowing coal left, he passed the fire to wood. The fire beings could not get the fire away from wood, and they finally gave up and went back up the mountain. And then Coyote showed the people how to get fire out of wood by rubbing two sticks together. The people learned how to cook their meat and warm their homes. They learned how to use fire to drive game into open spaces for hunting. They learned how to use campfires for storytelling and sweat lodges so they could be strong and healthy in body, mind, and spirit. The people learned that using fire means respecting fire.
What you have just seen is one of many traditional native stories explaining how people got fire. But what exactly is fire? For that answer, we turn to science. Scientifically speaking, fire is a chemical reaction called oxidation. Remember that word, oxidation. It's going to come up a lot in this video. A chemical reaction is when two substances join to form something new. Oxidation means that oxygen is one of the substances involved in the chemical reaction. Rust is an example of slow oxidation. Over time, oxygen reacts with iron and turns it into rust. Fire is an example of rapid oxidation. This is a much faster chemical reaction. Rust, slow oxidation. Fire, fast oxidation. You won't get burned sticking your finger into rust, but don't try it with fire. They're both oxidation, where oxygen is creating a chemical reaction. Now there's something you might not know. A fire can never happen unless four things are present: oxygen, fuel, heat, and combustion. Without these four things, a fire will never, ever start. Oxygen is everywhere on Earth. Wind and blowing on a campfire to get it started increase the oxygen flow to make the fire burn faster. Putting the lid on a kitchen grease fire starves it of oxygen and puts it out. No oxygen, no fire. Fuel is the second requirement for fire. Fuel is anything that burns. Some things burn quickly, others burn slowly, or not at all. Gasoline burns faster than dry grass or paper. Dry grass burns faster than a tree, and concrete won't burn at all. Why doesn't concrete burn? Because nothing in concrete is fuel. No fuel, no fire. Heat is the third requirement for fire. Even with plenty of oxygen and fuel, if the heat source isn't high enough, fire won't start. When firefighters spray water on a fire, they're cooling down the fuel. So far, we've talked about 3 of the 4 ingredients necessary for a fire to start: oxygen, fuel, and heat. But hang on a minute, there are 3 kinds of heat. Radiant heat takes the form of light. It spreads by heating objects that its rays land on. The sun gives off radiant heat. That's why it's cooler in the shade than it is in the sun's rays. Light bulbs give off a radiant heat too. A hot light bulb can start a fire in a dry Christmas tree. Convection is the second way that heat spreads. Convection heat is transferred through the air, but it doesn't take the form of light. For example, if a fire in one room of a building is hot enough, it may make the next room burst into flames, even if the fire hasn't physically spread to the next room. Conduction is the third way that heat can spread. It spreads when one thing actually touches another thing. If you park a vehicle with a hot muffler in dry grass, the muffler may touch the grass and start a fire. Just remember, heat is one of the must-have ingredients for fire. No heat, no fire. Okay, so far we've talked about oxygen, fuel, and 3 kinds of heat. You might be asking yourself, why do I need to know any of this? It's important to know because when we understand what causes a fire, we can do a better job of preventing accidental fires. For example, we can't control oxygen very well because it's everywhere, but we can keep fuel and heat away from each other. And because we can do that, we can also usually control the fourth requirement for a fire, combustion, which is another name for rapid oxidation. You remember what oxidation is, right? It's a chemical reaction where oxygen is one of the ingredients. Combustion, rapid oxidation, a chemical reaction, is what ignites the fuel. If combustion doesn't happen, fire doesn't happen. It's as simple as that. No combustion, no fire. On the other hand, if the right kind of fuel, high heat, and enough oxygen are present, combustion may be the result. Then you've got a fire on your hands. Now that we know all of this, we also know a couple of very important things. 1. We can prevent most fires by keeping heat away from fuel. And 2, we can put out fires in 2 ways: cooling the fuel or cutting off the oxygen. Some fires start without any help from us. Lightning is the most common natural cause of fire. It's a form of conduction heat. There is no fire until the hot lightning touches a fuel, something that will burn, such as a tree or a roof of a building. Another natural cause of fire is much more rare: spontaneous combustion. Spontaneous combustion is a chemical reaction that happens with no outside cause. Let's say we have a haystack, or a compost pile, or a pile of oily cotton rags, anything made of plant material. If the conditions are just right, the pile may start to rot. Rotting produces heat. Once in a while, the heat of rotting materials may get high enough to cause combustion and start a fire. But don't let anyone tell you that people can spontaneously combust. It's just not going to happen. Many hundreds of years before the first Europeans came to North America, our people were using managed burning to make their lives better. Managed burning means burning the land for a good purpose. Our ancestors carefully burned fields to kill weeds and make the soil richer for crops and edible plants. They burned forested areas to drive animals out into the open where they could be hunted easily. Managed burning also allowed new growth on the forest floor and provided a barrier between wildfire and the native village. These days, the practices of our ancestors are used around the world and accepted as good land management. Farmers and ranchers still use fire to renew farmland and grazing land. Experts in land management, conservation, reclamation, and forestry often use fires to manage grasslands and forests. And just as campfires and bonfires played a huge part in the social, cultural, and spiritual lives of our ancestors, they continue to meet the same needs for us. We still tell stories around campfires and use sweats to heal our minds, spirits, and bodies. But fire does things for us that our ancestors could never have dreamed of. For example, most electricity is created using fire. Inside our state's large power plants, fire burns coal or gas to turn water into steam. The steam then powers the process that makes electricity for hundreds of thousands of people. And let's talk speed. Fire is involved in all internal combustion engines. Recognize our old friend combustion? An internal combustion engine creates a small combustion or spark inside the engine. Without fire, we wouldn't have cars, motorcycles, planes, jets, rockets, or diesel trains. Fire. It's one of the best friends we have when we respect the flame. When we don't use respect, when we're careless around fire, bad things can happen. Damaging, out-of-control fires can happen many different ways, but too many of them involve human carelessness. Children play with matches. People light candles and leave them unattended. Smokers flick their cigarettes without making sure they are out cold. People are careless with farm equipment or vehicles near dry grass. We don't all use good sense with campfires or burn barrels. And believe it or not, some landowners actually choose to burn their fields on windy days in order to get the job done faster. The burn will go faster, all right, but it may take their home and thousands of acres along with it. Yes, there are many ways that people carelessly start fires that cause major pain, suffering, and heartbreak. According to the BIA, human-caused fires destroy an average of 187 homes and businesses every year in Indian country. In these fires, many people, including firefighters, are hurt or killed. Livestock, pets, and wild animals die. People lose their home or their job, and may have to move away from the community to live and work. This weakens the community. The worst part? Knowing that most of these fires could have been prevented. This brings us to a very painful subject: arson. Arson is when someone starts a fire on purpose to burn someone else's home or property, to hurt or even kill someone. Every year in Indian country, arson destroys hundreds of buildings and vehicles. Worse than that, many people are seriously injured or killed. Arson is not only dangerous, it's illegal. You can get a huge fine and a long prison sentence for starting fires. If someone dies in a fire you start, you may go to prison for the rest of your life. Arson is not the native way. The native way means caring about others, respecting ourselves, and being kind to the land. Respecting fire the way our ancestors did means paying attention, outside and inside. If you're working with a fire outside, wear clothing made of material from natural plant fibers, like cotton. Don't wear non-plant material like polyester. In a fire, polyester will melt onto your skin. Know the weather. Don't burn trash or fields on windy days. Call the office of your local fire or police department to find out the Fire Danger Index. Or go online to the National Weather Service's Fire Danger Index website. If you're going to have a bonfire or a campfire, or burn trash, the first thing you should do is clear a safe zone around the fire. Make sure there's nothing within 4 to 5 feet that will burn, and keep small children and animals away. Make sure your fire is completely out before you leave it. If the wood or embers, the glowing coals left under the fire, has died down, are too hot to touch, they're too hot to walk away from. In most rural areas of North Dakota, including the Res, it can take a while for firefighters to arrive. Your family can help save your home by creating a survivable space around the house and any outbuildings. A survivable space is a wide, non-combustible border around the entire building. Rock, concrete, bare earth, or moist shrubs will slow down a fire long enough to get everyone out safely before firefighters arrive. Let's talk fireworks, which are part of life on the Res. The safest thing to do is to leave the fireworks to the professionals. However, if you intend to shoot fireworks yourself, make sure they're legal. Then prepare a safe area, just like you would for a campfire or a bonfire, and make sure an adult is around to supervise. Put all used fireworks into a bucket of water for at least 30 minutes. Now let's look at fire safety indoors. The first rule of being safe from a home fire is to have a clear, simple plan of getting everyone out safely through a door or window. Make sure everyone living in your home regularly practices this plan in a fire drill, just like the ones at school. Make sure there are working smoke alarms in your home. Test them twice a year and put a new battery in them once a year. The kitchen is the scene of many house fires, and the most common cause is overheated grease or oil. Never pour water on a grease or oil fire. The result will be a gush of boiling steam and boiling oil. Instead, put a lid on it. Just put the lid on the pan. That'll cut off the oxygen and put out the fire. Candles can be a hazard if they are unattended or near flammable materials. Never leave them unattended. A space heater can easily start a fire. Make sure to keep the area around space heaters clear and keep small children and pets away from them too. Don't turn on space heaters in rooms where people are sleeping. Too many plugs in a wall outlet can create heat and start a fire. Just because you can plug 12 things into one wall outlet doesn't mean you should. And finally, be careful with cigarettes. Many home fires are the result of people falling asleep while smoking. Ask everyone in your home to make sure their cigarettes are completely out and to never smoke when they're sleepy. The results could be disastrous. So now you know the science of fire, how fires are started by nature and by people, all the great things fire does for us, and how to stay safe from fire. Are you interested in becoming a hero to your people? Today, there are more American Indian firefighters in the U.S. than there are firefighters of any other ethnic group. Since 1992, more than 1 out of 5 firefighters battling wildfires in the U.S. have been American Indian. You could be one of them. Your community has a great need for firefighters. When you turn 18, if you can pass the physical and mental tests that the BIA requires for firefighters, you can become a native hero. In North Dakota, 96% of all firefighters are volunteers. This means that you will probably not be paid for your firefighting services. It also means that you, as a volunteer firefighter, would be valued wherever you live. Being a firefighter is a very powerful way to honor our people and our land. But even if fighting fires is not your dream, you are now on the path to fire wisdom. Use fire's power, live safely, and help others do the same. Respect the flame.